Hi,
Hi,
I'm Sara Ines Calderon,
and I'm Adriana Maestas.
and this is your Latino Politics Roundup. Thank you so much for joining us. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel, like this story, or like this video.
Follow us on Twitter.
Follow us on Twitter. Leave your comments. Subscribe to our channel. I'm Sara Chica D on Twitter.
And I'm Latino Politics.
So let's go ahead and get started. I thought that this week was, I guess the top story this week was about the cabinet appointments in the second Obama administration.
Yeah, and no Latinos,
No
really,
Latinos.
it looks like.
We're done with
So
the
this
Latinos.
week, Secretary of Interior Ken Salazar announced that he was going to leave the administration in March. And the week before that, we had Hilda Solis announce that she was coming back to California. So that right now leaves us with no Latinos in the Obama cabinet, especially after all this hoopla about the Latino vote coming out for Obama in November. I think there are some people who might be a little disappointed.
Yeah. Well, and I guess the gossip is that Hilda Solis is going to come back to try to run for Gloria Molina's seat as an LA supervisor.
Which is a very powerful elected board in California. Yeah, exactly. They call them kings.
Pretty much. Pretty much. It's a huge deal.
So we don't really know what Ken Salazar is going to do, but he's just returning back home to Colorado. So I'm sure he'll pop up somewhere.
But there's really not any Latinos who can take over, or it doesn't look like there's any Latino candidates for cabinet positions right now under the Obama administration.
No, there doesn't. But what might happen is, assuming when people start to filter out. A lot of times with these appointments, people want to leave kind of on a high note. They don't want to leave towards the end of the administration. It might happen that a Latino could fill in for the last year or two in a certain cabinet position, and I think we might see that.
Okay.
So maybe, I don't know, maybe Bill Richardson could make a comeback.
That's true.
Some people have been thinking of that. Another idea that has come up is Antonio Villaraigosa, which I think a lot of people think that there are some real obvious pluses or minuses to that. Considering he's not very popular in LA. And he's lame duck as a mayor. Yeah. So that's a possibility and a name that has been thrown around.
Yeah. But even though there are Latinos getting out of the administration, we also have a bunch of Latinos in Congress right now.
Exactly. We do have a bunch of Latinos in Congress, and of note this week is Joaquin Castro of Texas 20th, one of the twins, the twin that's in Congress. He was elected the Democratic freshman class co-president. There's also a Latina who was elected a co-president. Actually, there are 4 co-presidents of the freshman class in Congress. But Michelle Lujan Grisham of New Mexico was also elected. So we have some representation there. Yeah.
And I think it's interesting. I think all these dynamics of Latino politics are of particular interest to me because of how they exist within the larger political environment, if you will, because we have this huge number of Latinos in Congress. And then I wrote a story. I tried to interview the DSCC, but they never got back to me. But I did interview Jesse Ferguson, who was very gracious, from the DCCC, who I asked the question, and I was like, well, if the DCCC is funded by members of Congress and you're always protecting incumbents, aren't you then perpetuating the white male status quo in Congress? How are you going to get not white male congressmen in Congress if you're always supporting incumbents who happen to be white men? And he was really good, and I think, I talked to a professor at Berkeley as well who kind of shed some light on it. Well, of course, it's a self-interested organization, but Jesse was also able to share some information about how the DCCC specifically funded Latino campaigns in this last race, which he said, along with the recruitment efforts from that organization, have helped to create this very diverse Congress that we have, or the most diverse Congress that we have this time around. So that story is really interesting. It's going to be in the references section. I suggest that you read it because I found it to be pretty interesting myself. So, and speaking of diversity in politics, and also kind of, touching on what she was talking about with Joaquin Castro out of Texas, I wrote a story that I thought was so cool about Texas Senator Leticia Vanderpute. She's a pharmacist. She's from San Antonio. She's just such a dynamo. She's a really amazing lady. but she was basically elected, or what is the word that they use? Sworn in of pro tempore of the Senate, of the Texas State Senate. So basically, it's not a huge, it's not as huge a deal as it could be in terms of like the powers that she has. But
yeah, it's mostly a ceremonial role.
But she is kind of like the overseer of the Senate, and then if the governor and lieutenant governor are out of state, then she's going to serve as the governor. So that was pretty cool. I mean, I think the thing that was interesting to me is here we're talking about this heavily red Republican state that's always considered, from the outside looking in, it's a red state, but then you have a Latina,
a
Democrat who's heading up the state Senate. So that's a really cool story. It's going to be in the references section in the comment box or in the description box, so definitely check that one out too. So speaking of Latino, politicians, we also had some really interesting news about Latino voters this week.
So basically, Latino Decisions on their website, they have an article by Gabriel Sanchez, and he's one of the political scientists who works with them. Basically says that, we haven't reached the full potential of the Latino electorate. So a lot of things a lot of things in the news, I want to say maybe for the last 6 months, was about, Latino voters, how they were coming out, but yet we still haven't realized the full potential of those voters. So the main information, the main takeaway from that is this. There are about 2.5 million Latinos who were registered to vote in the last election, but who did not cast a ballot. 2.5 million. I mean, that is a good-sized city, of people who did not, who weren't able to vote, who were already on the rolls somewhere, and did not cast a ballot. And then we have an additional 8.6 million Latinos who are eligible to register to vote and who didn't.
Register.
Yeah. So that brings us to, we're looking at a little over 11 million Latino voters who are not voting, when there are about 12.2 million Latino voters. So we could almost double the amount of Latino voters.
That's pretty impressive.
So that's something I think that we should keep in mind, and especially kind of keep our eyes on these numbers going into 2014 to see what happens in the midterm. I mean, can these organizations really beef up the registration and also turn out those people, the 2.5 million
definitely
that, are registered to vote and are not casting ballots? Like, what can be done to get those people to vote?
Yeah, that's definitely a tough nut to crack. So, well, thank you so much for joining us for another week. And like I said, don't forget to follow us on Twitter. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel, share this video, leave us comments, and we'll see you here soon. Thanks.
Yep. Bye.